Hey, it's Jack, and this video is how to tell if a guy is thinking about you, even if you haven't heard from him. So let's get right into this topic. If you have been wondering, does this guy even care? Does this guy think of me? Does it matter that we haven't been in touch? I think this video is going to help you, so stay till the end. So the first thing I want to say about this is for you to get clear, why is it important to you that you know whether he's thinking of you? So let's just run some possible scenarios. One reason you might want to know that he's thinking about you is because it will give you some evidence that he does care about you, or that you are meaningful to him in some way, right? And I totally get why you would want to have that experience, and I get why you'd want that to be true. The danger in this territory is that you make a false equivalence, that you make his thinking about you mean something in terms of his intention for you. And those things need to be clearly distinguished. Said differently, it's possible that a guy may be thinking about you a lot, but it doesn't actually change anything in terms of, is he going to step up and reach out to you more? Is he going to step up and say, hey, I want you back, or I want to start again, or can we go on a date, or would you be my girlfriend, or any of those things, right? So this is why I'm inviting you to get clear. The other reason that you might want him thinking about you is that it gives you a sense that you matter. And I want to put it to you that better than you having a sense that you matter because a guy's thinking about you is that you might be able to source your own worth more internally, that you matter because you matter, and you don't actually need to be preoccupying someone's mind. So let's spin this around a little bit. Is it good that you're on a guy's mind? Right? I think it's good if you're on a guy's mind if he wants to invest in some sort of relationship with you. But if you are occupying a guy's mental real estate and he doesn't actually want to pursue you in relationship, why is that actually good for you, and why is that actually good for him, right? So this is a little bit of a sobriety moment, a moment of coming to more sobriety and equanimity potentially within yourself. It works better in dating when you actually tend to get more direct about what it is that you want and what it is that, if you're a woman that dates men, that he's available for. And it cuts out some of the noise and cuts out some of the confusion. If you want to be on a guy's mind because actually he's under communicating to you what it is that he wants, where you stand, how he feels about you, it would be better if you actually had access to that information. Now, often you are receiving what we call a sub-communication. And a sub-communication is a fancy way of saying the communication is happening. It may not be spoken in words, right? So if a guy isn't really reaching out with you, if a guy isn't making plans with you, if a guy isn't initiating with you or showing some kind of consistent interest, he is making a communication with you. You might prefer it if he could articulate it in words, like, hey, I'm actually not that into this connection, or hey, I appreciate you in my life, but I think of you as a friend. And by the way, you can always prompt those questions, right? I'm more of a fan of you taking ownership of what it is that you want and asking for it, right? Because for most of us, men and women, but particularly women, I think this is a developmental move, because it might not be what your upbringing or expectations were in your childhood or culture, that you actually get to say, hey, what is my authentic desire? Why do I have to go around the labyrinth with this guy if I actually want more clarity? He has a right to give you whatever clarity he wants to give you. You have a right to ask for whatever clarity it is that you want. So I'm suggesting to you that even if it seems to lack a little bit of romance and mystery, you've been able to say to him, hey, I sometimes wonder about where I stand with you. Do you know? Could you tell me? That can actually save you a whole ton of emotional energy wondering about how much does he think of me, and if he does think of me, what does that mean, right? It's like we're taking something that could be Chinese whispers and we're kind of turning it into a more concrete, what we call shared reality, right? That between you share a reality as much as is possible between two people about what is actually going on, right? And the simpler the better, typically, with these things. So bear in mind, if he hasn't made that kind of communication with you, it's better to default to thinking, okay, he's not that into me, or he's not making a claim on me, rather than kind of getting down the rabbit hole of trying to interpret his every move. Now, you might say, well, I love that, right? I love the kind of the fantasy and the mystery and the confusion of thinking, well, what does this mean and that mean, and reading between the lines and checking out with my girlfriends. I mean, you are welcome to all that. If that's true for you, what I see often is that it leads to a lot of anxiety, preoccupation, taking you away from presence, right? You're now kind of over here with him, over here wondering what on earth is going on with him. You're trying to run it by other people. It's taking up conversational space that could be available for other potential love interests or dates, or even just having the enjoyment more fully of your singleness. So typically you're paying a price for this. And by the way, I've also come across guys who will think about a woman for months and years, but not really do anything about it, or not try and translate that into concrete action, because for some of us, the edge of development is actually stepping into the arena and stepping into action before we feel comfortable. And the space of our comfort zone is actually sitting on the couch, wistfully, romantically longing for someone, but not really doing something about it. Because if you do something about it, you might actually risk the romantic fantasy. You might risk finding out that they're not into you, or you're not actually so into them, or now they have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or now they're not so available to you. And also, let's be honest, most people are a mix of the good and the bad, right? The frail and the beautiful. And sometimes the thing that you hold in your mind about how amazing or cool or beautiful or fill in the blank someone is, when you actually get into contact with that person in reality, you also realize you're dealing with a human being, and a human being is often not, both on the good and the bad, not quite what they're cranked up to be in your mind, right? I say the good and the bad. Sometimes you think of someone, has done something that's hurt you or wrong, and you think that they're just an absolutely terrible person and complete narcissist and a complete, sort of failure of a human being. And, often the reality is a bit more muddy than that, right? But in this video, I'm focusing on the person who's always thinking about, what would it be like to be with this person, or how much is this person thinking of me, trying to jump through hoops of interpretation. And I'm saying there's something about this cold, hard, sober reality of reaching out to someone and saying, you know what is this? And I'm not doing it judgmentally. You're entitled to your desire, your authentic truth, your reality, your lived experience, honoring all those things. I'm just saying, could you share with me as best you can what's actually here? Because I notice I spend some time thinking about you, and I don't want that attention locked up on you if actually it'd be better placed somewhere else. That's not really fair to you. You didn't ask me for that. And it's not really fair to me, right? Because if you have any real care for me, you probably wouldn't want my attention locked up with you if it could be meaningfully being invested with someone where there's more potential runway, right? So never forget that. If a guy, whether he wants to be with you or not, if he really has a kind of mature respect and love for you in his heart, he doesn't want your energy tied up with him, right? He doesn't want that, because he gets that if that's happening, it's unlikely that you're going to be investing that same energy elsewhere. And if he's not going to try to pursue something with you, why should he be blocking you from pursuing with someone else? Now, again, he's not blocking you to the extent that you take ownership of your needs and desires, right? If you're saying, hey, there's a lack of ambiguity here, I'm happy to hang around in this for, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, so that we can figure it out, if indeed there's something to figure out, because, by the way, often he is actually somewhat clear inside. Or to make it simple, we can say, is he a 0 or 1, right? A 1 is he wants to invest in you, a 0 is everything else. And so if he's not a 1, he's currently a 0. And he has a right to that. And let's just lay down some likely truths here. The vast majority of men if you're a woman that dates men that you come into contact with, are going to be 0s to you. And I don't mean this to put them down or belittle them or belittle you. Just, again, sober reality. Vast majority of guys you come into contact with aren't going to sustain a love interest in you for the longer term, right? That is just data, numbers, stats, reality. So if you're going to err on the side of thinking something, you don't err on the side of thinking this guy's a 1, you err on the side of thinking he's a 0 until proven otherwise by his words and actions through time. And if he needs more time to discern whether he wants a sort of 1 orientation to you, you get to decide, does he have that time available to him? But wouldn't it be best if you had some kind of shared reality, like, you're like, that's cool. I can hang out for a month. That's fine. That's, if I end up with nothing from that, I'm fine. But if it's starting to feel like, your precious life energy is kind of being drained and you're feeling disrespected in the process, or you're feeling anxious and nervous because you don't really know where you stand, this is a good chance for you to say, actually, this isn't working for me. Now, sometimes the fear is that if you step into the situation with clarity, you might push him away, right? And maybe there's a risk of that. But typically, that doesn't push away 1s, right? It pushes away 0s, because even if they were 0.78, 0.9, If they're not going to tip over into that one, which is like a full embodied interest in you, then yeah, this dials them back, right? Sometimes you actually saying, hey, what's going on here, brings some clarity to the guy of like, yeah, I don't really know, or I wish I knew, but I'm not really clear. And then he might have to confront his own lack of clarity. Different seasons of life, different dynamics between people are amenable to different sorts of clarities, right? So I have a lot of space for people to not have clarity, to not yet know, but I also have a lot of space for you to be clear. What does that do for you, right? Does it serve you to be around a guy that doesn't have clarity in your direction? Sometimes what could serve you more is to say, I'm going to downshift, but I'm going to leave the door open, or I'm going to downshift, and then I'm willing to connect back. You know, hey, if I'm single in 6 months, why don't we go for a coffee and just catch up, right? Then you get on with your life, you redirect your attention and energy to what it is that you're hoping to manifest. And if somehow he gets clarity in 6 months that he doesn't have now, right, which isn't way common, but it's possible, then you're not closing the door to him, right? You're not kind of aggressively pushing away. Where this tends to go wrong for people is where his lack of interest somehow gets caught up in your wounding about value or about worth. And so you feel disrespected that he doesn't have clarity for you. Now, if he's being very in and out, I'm not saying that that's great behavior from him, but I am saying it works better for you if you take ownership of your worth and value, right? We're not here coaching him right now. We're here supporting you. Supporting you is to say, oh, if I notice that in and outness from him actually really plays with it, really tugs on the threads of my self-esteem, then I don't want to engage in that. But you are big enough and old enough to learn how to take responsibility for that. It still may not be pleasant. It still may sting. You still may have an absolute preference for a guy coming at you with clear and consistent energy. But sometimes the quickest way to a guy coming towards you with clear and consistent energy is to know how to deal with the guys who aren't, right? To not get entangled, to not participate in situationships, to not participate in something that is eroding at your self-esteem. Why? Because you're the person in your acts of self-love or on your journey of self-love who can learn how to bolster your self-esteem. Some of you listening to this right now will have what we call relationally contingent self-esteem. And this is where this territory is hard for you, because it basically means it's hard for you to own your self-esteem sort of other than through what is being mirrored back to you, right? So this is where you need to be really mindful of if a guy is showing up with something that's not a consistent energy. Do you want to continue to invest there? Because the risk is it's starting to undermine your self-esteem, and then the more your self-esteem is undermined, the more you're going to go into confusion and delusion. The more you're going to imagine, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I have to overplease or overwork in order to keep him interested. Then at some point he cuts you out. Now you feel devastated. Now you're wondering what on earth happened. How could another guy treat you like this? And again, none of this is about saying that guys don't vary a lot in terms of the quality of their behavior, right? But let's just be honest, all guys at certain points don't behave well, right? All guys. I just think that's, I'm not making excuses for that. I'm just saying, let's work as guys to do better and do better and do better. Absolutely all for that. But sometimes we're lame, or sometimes we fall short. Your job is to learn how to stay centered in yourself, and as clear and as sober and as equanimous, like centered as you can, when that sort of energy is around you, to work out, hey, is it good for me to keep this in my field? If you start to have to really push away from a guy in a way that makes him wrong, in a way that's harsh and judgmental, sometimes you might have to do that if that's your only way of like kind of taking your power back and reclaiming your space. But what we're ideally going for is that, this difference between discernment and judgment, right? Judgment says you're wrong. You should have clarity. You should treat me better. You should treat me different. Discernment is kind of like, what do I want in my life? And if there's things coming from you that I don't want in my life, I'm actually going to take my step back. I'm going to take responsibility for my boundaries, for my space, my home, my house. What do I want coming into my field? That serves you in better stead. That is a better guardian of your self-esteem. And if you do have this kind of relationally contingent self-esteem, this is a good area for you to work, and it might be really hard, and sometimes it might be small and hard-earned wins. So even if it sounds unromantic to you, I would love for you to be less in the business of trying to figure out what he thinks and more in the business of making communications that invite you to make a determination about him and his presence in your life. These sorts of communications can include, hey, where do I stand? hit me with it. Do you know what you see between us? Do you feel any more clear in our connection than you did, a month, 3 months ago? Are you wanting to date me exclusively? An authentic reveal could be like, I notice that I'm starting to feel anxious in our connection, and I'm not really enjoying that part of our connection. And I'm wondering if you have clarity, or if your clarity is part of what's having me feel anxious. So notice, these aren't threats, these aren't blaming him. It's not saying he should be having a different experience. We basically want to be out of the business called you should be doing different, you should have a different experience, because mostly that causes us pain and limitation, right? It's better if we can sort of notice where people are at, make requests, state needs, ask for adjustments, ask for accommodations, but ultimately realize you're kind of dealing with a sovereign individual in front of you, and you're a sovereign individual, and sometimes there's simpatico and sometimes there's not. But the more you're out of he should and the more you're into I want, you're going to find you're more empowered in your life. So if you're wondering what he thinks, let's put him down for a moment and let's get you in your journal noticing, what is it that I want? Do I actually want to be in a situation where I don't really know where I stand with a guy? Or maybe I've actually undersold to him that I do want clarity. So really the maneuver is just to say, hey, in the coming weeks, I noticed I would like more clarity in our connection, right? So I'm not saying it has to happen tonight, but I'm kind of like putting you on notice that this needs to start moving in the direction of clarity, or at least you and I need to start talking about it. And if he takes a big step back from that, that's good information for you, right? Sometimes that's inspiring to a guy, and sometimes that's clarifying in the other direction. There is a risk, but I don't think your asking is what creates the underlying reality. I think your asking is what reveals perhaps what was already there. So I'd love to know what your experience is. Please hit me up in the comments. I read them all. Please, if you're new here and haven't, subscribe to this channel. Releasing a lot of content on personal growth, dating, authenticity, and how we can do better in our ways of being with each other. And I'd love to have you with us. This is an awesome community. As always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.